What is up, guys? Welcome on back to TK's Garage, and we got access to our first press briefing, although virtually. It was super cool to be able to have that, and we're going to be running that here in a minute, talking about everything from tariffs to deregulation, meaning emissions, and the like. So without further ado, let's roll the intro and get into the video. So what is up, guys? Welcome on back to TK's Garage. So in the White House press briefing room today, there were other YouTubers present sitting in front of the legacy media. You know they have to be going batshit crazy that YouTubers are sitting in front of them. That said, I am already scheduling my trip. I am going to go out there. I am waiting on a couple of things to happen in Congress so that I can ask the relevant questions while I'm there. And I think it's going to be huge, man. So stay tuned for that. But Caroline Leavitt came out today and answered a lot of questions, or made a lot of statements, and then started getting into questions with the media, legacy and new. And I thought it was pretty telling. We're talking about tariffs and talking about what's going on trade-wise, talking about emissions and bringing costs down, talking about energy costs coming down and the like. So anyways, without further ado, let me roll that here.
Happy Friday. As you all know, the president is currently undergoing his routine and long-scheduled physical at Walter Reed Medical Center, and we will have a readout from the White House physician. Last night, Casina Carolina arrived back safely in the United States after being detained in Russia for more than a year. Since Inauguration Day, President Trump and his team have secured the release of more than 40 detained Americans abroad. This is more than half of the number of Americans released by Joe Biden in 4 years, and President Trump has brought these Americans home in 80 days. This administration will continue to work hard to bring Americans home from around the world. As I've said before, and I will say it again today, everybody in this room has access to the most transparent and accessible president in American history. The cabinet meeting yesterday was further proof. President Trump asked each secretary to provide an update to all of you in the media on the critical work they are doing at their respective agencies to deliver on his agenda. And according to new reporting from the Washington Times, who I believe is in this room today, President Trump answered nearly 100 questions from the press, all of you, during his first 3 open press cabinet meetings this year. That's nearly 20 times the number answered by Joe Biden in cabinet meetings during his entire 4 years in office. In more excellent economic news that was released yesterday, the Consumer Price Index report showed inflation fell to 2.4% in March, smashing expectations for the second straight month in a row. This marked the first drop in consumer prices dating all the way back to the COVID pandemic. Prescription drug prices saw the largest monthly decline on record. Prices for airfare, used vehicles, and car insurance all decreased as well. And energy prices fell 2.4% in March, driven by plummeting gas prices around the country. Also yesterday, House Republicans answered President Trump's call to move forward the budget resolution and officially set the stage for the passage of one big, beautiful bill. The American economy will boom after this bill is passed and the rest of the president's pro-growth agenda goes into effect. The largest tax cuts and deregulation in history, coupled with our energy industry unleashed and renegotiated trade agreements that put America first, are the ultimate formula to usher in the golden age of America. On that note, more than 75 countries have now reached out to the Trump administration, eager to address the trade issues that have exploited America and hurt our workers in the process. The phones have been ringing off the hook to make deals, and these countries wisely heeded President Trump's warning not to retaliate, and as a result, they were rewarded with a 90-day pause and substantially lower reciprocal tariff rates during this period so potential solutions can be achieved. Past presidents just willingly accepted the failed status quo on trade that ripped off our workers and our companies. But that's not who this president is. He creates his own leverage and negotiates deals better than anyone else who has sat in the Oval Office before him. and that process is currently underway. On another matter, the deadline for registration under the Alien Registration Act is today. All foreign nationals present in the United States longer than 30 days must register with the federal government. Failure to comply with this is a crime, punishable by fines, imprisonment, or both. As President Trump and Secretary Noem have both said, if you register and you leave now, you choose to self-deport, you may have the opportunity to return later legally. But if not, you will be arrested, fined, deported, never to return to our country again. The Trump administration will continue to enforce our nation's immigration laws. We will not pick and choose which laws to enforce. We must know who is in our country for the safety and the security of our homeland and for all American citizens. I also have a note from the First Lady to share with you on this Friday. On Tuesday this week, First Lady Melania Trump celebrated the advancement of the Take It Down Act in the House Energy and Commerce Committee. The important legislation passed the committee with bipartisan support, and as you may remember, the President talked about this bill in his address to a joint session of Congress last month. The First Lady remains dedicated to her championing child well-being, ensuring that every young person can thrive, and of course, championing her Be Best agenda. We urge Congress to swiftly pass this important legislation. Here in our new media seat today, we have Jordan Berman. Jordan is a social media content creator and influencer and a lawyer who grew up following breaking down the news from a neutral perspective. Jordan is the host of her own podcast called Unbiased Politics, where she dissects the top stories from the week from a legal perspective. Jordan focuses on bringing back real journalism from a nonpartisan perspective and has mastered explaining complex legal decisions to a mass audience in the short-form context. Her two biggest platforms are TikTok and Instagram, where she has roughly 500,000 followers on each. With that, please kick us off, Jordan.
Thank you. As you know, yesterday the House passed the SAVE Act, and many married women, soon-to-be married women, are concerned that the new voter ID requirements may inhibit their access to the polls. What assurances can you give women voters in America to ease their concerns?
Sure. Well, the SAVE Act, as you mentioned, was passed by the House yesterday. This is the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. I believe I'm getting that correct. And this act is a common sense measure. It would require proof of citizenship for voting in our elections. The Democrats have been fear-mongering about this bill, have been saying that married women, if their name has changed, they didn't change it on their identification, would not be able to vote. That is complete fallacy. There are outlined in the bill about how to avoid that. The president very much supports a common sense solution to ensuring that only citizens can engage in our elections. This is critical to improving the integrity of our elections and also the trust that American citizens need to have in our electoral process. So the president supports this bill, and that is a myth that has been proven wrong by the text of this bill. And I believe some of the co-sponsors of the bill have been very vocal in addressing that. And certainly I myself, as a married woman, would not stand before this podium if the president did not support such a common sense measure.
Thank you. For my next question, I actually want to give a voice to the American people. I sourced a question from one of my listeners. Her name is Bryn. She is from Oregon. And she asked, what, if any, plans do you have, the administration, for the money that will be generated by tariffs imposed on foreign goods? How will the administration facilitate the development of American industries when many critical components, labor, parts, etc., are much cheaper and more feasible from foreign entities?
It's a great question from your listener, and I want to thank her for submitting it to you to ask. That's the part of the new media seat, is so that everyday Americans across the country have a voice in this room. So thank you again for being here. Thanks for the question. The president's point about his trade and tariff agenda is to bolster our manufacturing industries here in our country, to bring down the cost of living here in our country, and to ensure that we are maintaining critical supply chains here in America. We cannot be dependent on countries like China if we want this country to be strong and wealthy. So the president wants to restore wealth to America by shoring up these jobs here at home, which will result in good paying jobs and higher wages for the American public. And so Americans should trust in that process. He effectively implemented tariffs in his first term while driving down the cost of living in this country, and that's what he's focused on doing again. So thank you.
As a follow-up question, can I just ask, are there any specific ideas that the administration has as to what that revenue, specific tariff revenue, will be used for?
Yes, to the heart of your question, the president has spoke about the trillions of dollars that he expects in revenue revenue from tariffs and how we can use it to pay down our debt and to ensure that we are no longer faced with a crippling national debt in the trillions that is going to bankrupt our nation for future generations. So that money coming back home will make America in the green rather than in the red, which any small business owner across the country, I believe, can appreciate.
Thank you so much.
Thank
So there you have it. I know, an automotive YouTuber that has access to the White House. I know there's some people salty right now. Anywho, I am out here at my contract gig, and I just got done doing work and just got done doing my grocery shopping here at the wonderful commissary. And I wanted to touch base with you guys and talk about what was going on. There are some very interesting things that are going on with tariffs, as the United States has now increased our tariffs on China to 145%. China has imposed 125% on the U.S. I did see something with Stuart Varney. I might run that here in a minute, where he talked about he had discussions with a couple of experts that were dealing with, does this hurt China more than it hurts us? And I've said this multiple times. China is we are China's biggest consumer. We buy the most stuff from them, from China. So if we stop buying from them all of a sudden, they are in massive trouble. And you're already seeing it, with their currency coming down. Last quarter or last month, you could see they were at a negative over their, consumables, talking about their economy. And while I know a lot of this stuff is difficult right now, I think over time we're going to see some really good benefits over this trade war. There's gonna be some pain points for sure in the short term, but I think in the long term we end up benefiting because we'll get to a deal that we actually can live with. And
obvious question, Gordon, who suffers the most in this trade war, China or the United States?
Well, China does. First of all, its economy is probably contracting. We saw this from the price data for March, where both consumer and producer prices were below zero. Also, the thing is, they're having their 2008 right now. In 2008, they didn't want a downturn. They overstimulated, took on a lot of debt. Now they got to deal with the debt. Property market is collapsing. And then Trump says, we're having this tariff war. And what this does is it really closes off China's biggest market, the United States. So the 145% tariffs, most Chinese goods don't get into the U.S. because of that. Now, the only way that Xi Jinping can win this trade war is if he can convince President Trump, who's holding all the high cards from an objective point of view. The only way Xi Jinping wins is if he can get Wall Street or Main Street or the farmers to force Trump to back down preemptively. I don't think that's going to happen because our president's pretty determined.
Could he unleash, Xi Jinping, could he unleash financial warfare? China holds $760 billion worth of treasury debt. If they sell some of it, prices go down and our interest rates go up. He could do that.
He could do that, but he probably is not going to, because that has a lot of effect on the renminbi. Remember, he wants to sell U.S. dollar debt because he needs to prop up his currency, but he needs to do it in a controlled manner. If he crashes the U.S. dollar, which he probably could do, it's lights out for him. So I don't think he's going to do that. He's got a lot more vulnerabilities than we do. We're the bigger economy. We're the trade deficit economy. We hold the high cards.
Who knows? Maybe we end up, maybe Trump ends up letting Cherry or BYD invest in Chrysler and do that entire disaster. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Give the video a big thumbs up if you like what I do. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And as always, stay petty, my friends.